Samsung's new Galaxy Tab and Tab Ultra is one of the only tablets every year that I think genuinely challenges the iPad Pro in a meaningful way. And this year, that divide is still just as interesting as ever. I've been using both the M5 iPad Pro, which just recently came out over the last month, and the Tab S11 Ultra side by side. And my biggest takeaway is pretty simple. The iPad Pro is a very good device, fantastic, and I absolutely love using it, and Apple's hardware and apps remain unmatched in a lot of ways. But the Tab S11 Ultra is just a little bit more versatile for me. Samsung just gives you more built-in functionality without pushing you into expensive accessories or storage upgrades, and that makes the comparison a lot closer than you might think. Let's start with the hardware because that's usually where the Ultra makes its biggest statement. Samsung is sticking with the huge 14.6-inch dynamic AMOLED display, and it continues to be one of the best screens on any tablet. Apple's newish tandem OLED display, made by I think Samsung and LG at times, that is also a really good display. It's kind of a 1A, 1B. Honestly, one of the nicest displays that Apple has really ever made in the last few years, but Samsung is still shipping a larger panel. It comes with 120 Hz, deep contrast, vibrant colors, and an excellent anti-reflective coating, and they're not forcing you into another $100 or $200 upgrade just to get that matte nanotexture option that Apple offers, even though I will say it's a much more pronounced anti-reflective display on the iPad Pro. The nanotexture is just a bit better, but at least you get something here that helps, and it's included in the price. And even with that giant display, Samsung somehow keeps this thing extremely thin. It's truly massive, but it never really feels ridiculous or uncomfortable to hold. Although, if you know me, I'm almost exclusively using these bigger tablets with some sort of keyboard case. And unfortunately, that's a department where Samsung is really lacking in, at least in my opinion, but more on that later. Now, before we get into the rest of this video, I do just want to take a quick minute to let you know about today's sponsor, Clean My Mac. It's the holiday season, which usually means two things: way too many cookies and a Mac that's been hoarding all of the wrong ones. Every year around this time, my Mac starts to feel sluggish for months of cached files, system junk, and random stuff piling up in my downloads folder. Clean My Mac is basically the digital cookie cutter that clears all of that so your Mac feels fresh again. Clean My Mac gives you a really clean, easy dashboard for keeping your Mac running like it should. The cleanup tool removes system clutter and old development junk. My Clutter helps you spot duplicates and the big storage wasters that you forget you even had. And Smart Care lets you run all of the essentials in just one click. The new Cloud Cleanup feature is an awesome tool as well. It scans your iCloud, OneDrive, and Google Drive for giant synced or unsynced files, and it all happens locally on your Mac so your data stays private and secure. Plus, the Menu app and Assistant that gives you the quick tools for performance issues like battery drain or overheating is a must-have. When it comes to malware, your Mac is at risk too, despite what people might think. And with just a click, the anti-malware tool scans and removes viruses, ensuring your Mac remains threat-free. If your pre-holiday to-do list is already packed, the last thing you need is a slow Mac. So let Clean My Mac clear the wrong cookies so that you can enjoy the right ones. Get tidy today, try 7 days free, and use my code MacRumors20 for 20% off. That's MacRumors20 for 20% off. Thanks Clean My Mac for sponsoring this video. Storage and RAM is another good area for Samsung here. It keeps leaning into a more consumer-friendly approach. You can spec the S11 Ultra up to 16 gigs of RAM and 1 terabyte of internal storage, and then just throw in a micro SD card up to 2 terabytes if you want to, which could be a lot cheaper than what Apple is offering. Apple's always been a bit stubborn in the storage department, still locking higher tiers behind huge price jumps, and of course has not offered expandable options at all. So if you're someone who edits a lot of video like I do, or you have a lot of huge project files, whatever it might be, and you just want flexibility with cheaper storage, Samsung continues to make that really easy for you, and it's built in with a, internal micro SD card slot. Though the iPad Pro can use external SSD thanks to the Thunderbolt USB-C port here. So, you could probably still use a storage option for the Samsung tablet, but getting in good speeds with Thunderbolt is something that you can do on the iPad. So at least external options are not out of the question. And then there's the S Pen. Samsung continues to include it inside of the box with no extra cost, no need to pair anything, and no need to charge it. The new version has a revised tip that feels more natural, and a hexagonal body that gives you the feel of an actual pencil. It actually feels a lot more like the Apple Pencil and Apple Pencil Pro at this point, which I do personally prefer over the S Pen over the last few years, so definitely not complaining there. Docking still isn't quite as seamless as Apple Pencil on the iPad Pro, but the fact that Samsung treats it like a standard tool instead of a premium add-on makes a huge difference. But where Samsung really separates this tablet from Apple's lineup is versatility. Dex continues to be one of the most underrated features on any tablet. You get extended mode, true dual screen support, and multiple workspace style desktops that behave closer to a laptop-like environment than what you get on iPadOS. Although Apple is improving multitasking, year over year now, especially with iPadOS 26, and even dipping into the new unreleased beta. 26.2 brings you split view back to what it normally used to be, and it reintroduces slide over, kind of making things all feel more familiar. But Samsung has been doing this desktop style approach for years now, and you can feel the maturity in their system. If you want a tablet that behaves like a tablet when you're watching content or drawing, but then quickly becomes a pseudo laptop replacement when you need it, Samsung gives you more flexibility there. Battery life and charging continues to kind of lean in Samsung's favor. I mean, I guess on paper, there's an 11,600 milliamp hour battery with 45 watt fast charging. I think Apple offers with the largest iPad Pro just under 11,000 milliamp hours, and the charging specifications are unclear. I think you can kind of get away with 40 watts, but real world battery life is kind of always going to vary depending on what you're doing. And most of the time, I'm not noticing any huge differences in overall battery life, but I would say I think I get by just a little bit more on the Tab S11 Ultra, though I think this part's closer than we think. All of this sits on top of Samsung's biggest messaging push right now, which is AI, and Galaxy AI to be specific. And this is where Samsung does have a legitimate lead. Most people do when it comes to Apple and AI. Drawing assistant, writing assistant, on-device translations, AI summaries that open in floating windows, the ability to pull contextual information from whatever is on your screen or in your camera feed using Gemini Live. These are all real tools that you can use right now. Apple Intelligence isn't necessarily the best on the iPad, and even when you use Apple Intelligence on an iPad, it's just gonna be, a very limited experience for the most part. Samsung is more aggressive here, and having Google and the ability to use Google Gemini is obviously better than what most people are getting with Siri and Apple Intelligence. I don't think people are switching over and picking that for that reason, but you do have better flexibility and just more to offer with Google Gemini and Galaxy AI over what Apple has. And hopefully that changes soon, but that's kind of where we are with AI. Now, performance is the one area where the iPad Pro still maintains a pretty big advantage. Apple's M5 chip is crazy powerful, way more powerful than what most people will ever need in a tablet. And the iPad Pro continues to kind of be a performance king. But do you really need all of that power? And does that equal versatility? And this is where Samsung just kind of has a different approach. It still offers really good power, but you do get the bigger screen, the expandable storage, the included stylus, faster charging, IP68 durability, a richer multitasking environment, a better suite of AI features. So when you're looking at all of that, and then you're looking at a very powerful iPad, which one do you really need out of the box? Which one's more capable for you and your needs? But Samsung does still have two pretty big weaknesses, and to me, they matter quite a bit. The first is just apps. The Android tablet landscape just isn't where it needs to be. Apple's App Store has far more dedicated iPad apps, especially third-party apps, and developers continue to build better, more optimized tablet experiences for the iPad than they do for Android tablets and Samsung tablets specifically. Even with all of Samsung's versatility, there are just certain apps, especially pro apps, that the iPad just wins in. So you get Final Cut, you get Logic, and then third-party Procreate, LumaFusion, Affinity Photo. I mean, these are just a lot of apps for creators, and that just kind of keeps you in the Apple ecosystem. And I'm not sure what it is, but even apps that are on both platforms just seem to function better and look a lot better on the iPad. And then the second weakness, in my opinion, is the keyboard situation. This is probably more niche, more, kind of more towards my personal use case here. But if you're someone who wants a huge tablet to act as that pseudo laptop replacement when you need it, this might be a big issue for you because a keyboard case is a must. And Samsung's new keyboard cover is fine, it works, but the lack of trackpad is a huge step backward in my opinion. And Samsung has already kind of confirmed that another keyboard is coming in 2026, and it's supposed to be more like Apple's Magic Keyboard, which tells me even they know that their keyboard isn't quite enough and that Apple has a better lead here. Hopefully this is still in the mix, but Apple's Magic Keyboard remains one of the best typing experiences on any tablet. It's a really good trackpad. It's premium, it's stable, it elevates the iPad into a laptop-like machine, and it's basically a must-have accessory for those larger tablets. Samsung keyboard, it just doesn't match that experience, and I don't love the fact that I gotta lift my hands off the keyboard to then scroll and still touch the tablet. A trackpad would be much better. I know there are some other models from the years prior that does still work with this. It's not meant for it, but it still works with it. But even then, that trackpad experience was a nightmare in my opinion. I absolutely hated it. We need something better, Samsung, so hopefully this new unreleased keyboard is still happening and it's still just as good. Or as good as what you get with Apple. So that's really the story this year. The iPad Pro is still the better device in terms of performance, apps, accessories, and overall polish. But Samsung gives you more versatility without forcing extra purchases. You don't have to buy the stylus, you don't have to buy extra storage, you don't have to spend hundreds more just to get the best display coating. And you get features Apple still refused to add, like expandable storage, faster charging, a larger display. I mean, we have a 13-inch display, but if you need to go even larger, you can. IP68 durability, deeper multitasking, etc., etc. For me, the iPad Pro is, unfortunately, with all of that listed, still my personal tablet of choice because of the apps and the accessory ecosystem and just the ecosystem in general. Obviously, if you have a ton of Apple devices like me, you want to get with the iPad Pro here because it just makes more sense of how well it integrates into my tech life. The same goes for those who have a lot of Samsung devices. It just makes more sense for you to stick in that ecosystem. But if you're looking for the best hardware with the most features that suit your needs, you might find that in the Tab S11 Ultra. Of course, I'd love to hear from you in the comments down below. Which one would you go with? If you had to pick, maybe just pull ecosystem aside, would you choose the S11 Ultra or the M5 iPad Pro? Let me know down in those comments. This has been Dan with MacRumors. Thanks so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you around in the next video.